Brian Soscia here with former WWE superstar, TNA superstar. He's been all around. One half of the Hardy Boys, all kinds of titles he's won. Matt Hardy, who's coming to town Saturday, Friday night in New York, Saturday night in Philadelphia for the big Extreme Rising event. ExtremeReunion.net to get tickets and more info. Thanks for coming on, Matt. I appreciate it.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Just some stuff I want to get to. I mean, you've had an interesting career. I mean, the way you started, the way it's going now, everything. So I just kind of want to start from the beginnings. And I know that you, and I guess it was Jeff too, helped out and ran or owned the Omega promotion, right?
Yeah, it was the majority of that was me. Jeff obviously wrestled there, but I was kind of the brains of the whole operation, kind of did all the setup and decision-making and whatnot as far as that goes. But it was one of those situations, once we first started wrestling and we actually had an opportunity to get out and do a few things, we both wanted to wrestle more just so we could obviously season ourselves and become better at what we did, and we knew a few guys, so we ended up actually buying a ring and promoting our own shows just so we had a place and a promotion where we could get more ring time and more experience. And
well, that's from what I understand. I mean, where were you? Were you like officially trained, or did you guys train yourselves? How did that work?
Yeah, it's a weird situation. We more or less emulated what we saw on TV, in a trampoline. And then we did the very basics. We did arm drags, we did hip tosses, the basic things we would see on TV. Once we got with a gentleman named the Italian Stallion, who actually allowed us to go with him up to WWE as extras, he actually started kind of teaching us the terminology and the way to correctly do things and officially do things. And we kind of took the knowledge he gave us and used that with what we already knew, and that's kind of what actually started building the whole mold for making both of us professional wrestlers.
Well, if you, when you're first starting, obviously you're young guys. I don't know how young you were, but when you had Omega, how young were you then?
I was 17, 18. Before it was officially Omega, when we first started running shows, I was right at 18. I just turned 18.
Were you getting like from the older guys, the vets, were they like, oh, these young punks trying to run a promotion, or were they just wanted to come work for you?
Well, a lot of the older guys didn't work for us, and we didn't look for those. We kind of had like a group of guys that we knew that were our friends that were kind of starting in the business, right after Jeff and I did, that we utilized. And then we had other guys that we were starting to kind of take underneath our wings from the things we'd learned in our short career in the business so far. And the majority of guys that worked for Omega were just like our specific guys, our specific group. Like, we didn't really use outsiders or older, more experienced veteran guys in the business.
Gotcha. So when you were doing Omega, though, I mean, obviously you wanted to take the next step. You talk about the Italian Stallion. A lot of people know him from his enhancement days, helping you guys out, getting you up to WWE. But, I mean, what was your goal at first? Was it WWE? Was it WCW? Was it anywhere you could get? Or what was the deal?
Our goal at first, obviously, was just anywhere we could get. I mean, I think both myself and Jeff, we just wanted to be able to make a living being a professional wrestler. Not just like pay your bills, but actually make a living. So if we get an opportunity anywhere, that would be it. And I think in a perfect world, it would have been WWE. And fortunately, that ended up working out.
Was there somebody sent me a Facebook message asking about you sending a tape to WCW or something, an amateur challenge they mentioned, and something about high voltage, and your name got stolen. Is there any truth to that they wanted to know?
Yes, there is. It's an interesting story, to say the least. I actually submitted a tape to a contest they had, which was called the WCW Amateur Challenge for all aspiring wrestlers or just anyone who enjoyed the wrestling business to send an interview in, and if any of it was catchy enough, they would air it on the show, and eventually they were going to announce one winner, and there was some sort of monetary prize. And then also, they said that you might get a chance to come to WCW. I don't really think that led to anything as far as someone like actually getting a chance to get their foot in the door. But my tape actually aired on WCW, a portion of it, maybe 30 seconds of it, and then the tape actually stayed at the power plant. And some of my trial matches that were on it, they were actually in there watching, and they saw the name I used that I went by was High Voltage. And someone at the power plant actually thought that was a good name when they were looking for a new name for a tag team. And
Robbie Rage and Kenny Chaos.
Correct. Correct.
That had to be huge when you were a kid, seeing yourself on TV, or when you were younger. That had to be a big thing, man.
It was. It was very neat. Later on in time, like on some of the DVDs I've produced, I actually have played the whole interview, which people were pretty intrigued by seeing the whole.
It's that one. Okay, I've seen that. I know what you're talking. I didn't realize it was that one. All right, cool. Also, Matt, I just want to keep moving here. I mean, all right. I followed some of your indie work. I remember seeing you down here in Delaware at ECWA, the Super 8 tournament.
Right.
And how do you feel the Super 8 tournament helped you? I mean, by that point, you were already in WWE, right? Did you just agree to come down and do it, or were you, super psyched? Because that's a big deal around here.
Yeah, no, we actually, I think we had talked about doing that earlier on right before we'd signed with WWE. And WWE, they were really cool with us in the beginning. They kind of let us finish out all the independent dates we'd already set up originally. And it was cool because we were at WWE where we were starting to make a name for ourselves, but the Super 8 was kind of like a pretty high-profile position for independent guys. So just myself and Jeff participating in that actually gave us a lot of exposure, which even obviously helped out. Even though we had started WWE, it helped out, like, giving credibility to both of us.
Yeah, that definitely helped make some guys. It's cool that you guys could compete in that and say you did. I want to talk about when you actually went to WWE first time as enhancement talent, and you said Italian Stallion brought you up there. What was it like being a young kid, kind of, starting to achieve your dream? You walk in there amongst men at the time. You guys are still kids pretty much. Who was your first match against up there?
The first match that I had, actually Jeff wrestled first before any of us did. Jeff was only 16.
Oh.
He was terrified. He actually ended up wrestling Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, and the reason why is because the other guy who was in the match originally said he couldn't take his finish, so now Razor Ramon was all hot, and he was upset and aggravated, so he beat up Jeff pretty good in the match. Jeff was 16. Jeff worked really hard. He sold well, and both like Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels and the rest of the clique actually said, "Oh, well, you're a real talented kid. We can tell you're real young, but just considering you got through in the match at the last moment, you did really good." I was on about an hour later against Nikolai Volkov, which was on live TV, Live Raw.
Oh, man.
I'd only wrestled in 7 matches in a hard ring. And my first match with WWE was on live TV against Nikolai Volkov. And he could hardly speak English at that point anyway. And actually, when I talked to him before the match, he told our whoever our producer was for the match, said, he said, looked at me, he said, "Oh, don't worry, Matt." He said, "I messed up all the time, all the time. Don't worry, it's okay. We just keep going." And then as soon as he walked away, the guy who was the producer that worked for WWE, which was Tony Gree, said, "I just want you to know, if you mess this up, they'll never bring you back again."
Oh.
So it was a pretty high-pressure situation, to say the least. But I went out there and got through it, and it was okay. And needless to say, we ended up getting a call back to come back and do TVs again for WWE.
Now, do you remember, though, after hearing all that, your last-minute thoughts before you go out that curtain? Were you excited? Were you nervous? Was it a mix? Were you like, "Oh, my God, what am I doing here? Live TV, oh."
It was definitely a mix of being excited and being nervous because, obviously this is kind of the realization of a dream, to be able to wrestle in a WWE ring. And for us, it was very overwhelming coming in that first day and seeing all these guys that you've grown up watching, and actually seeing them interact and how they are, out of character and just interacting backstage and sharing the same locker room with them to a degree. But then when you go out there, like, hey, this is the real deal. Like, if you go out here and things go wrong, this could be a huge career-changing opportunity, and it could either be good or bad by allowing you to come back and get more opportunities like this or getting kicked out the door for good and not getting another opportunity to show what you have.
Who was the nicest guy to you when you first got up there? Someone that you like, they came in, and again, you guys are young kids, and they might not all be gung-ho to work with you. Who do you think was the nicest guy, maybe helped guide you a little bit?
Owen Hart definitely stands out. Owen was real cool to us. I wrestled Owen a couple times on WWE TV when we were doing extra work, and every time I wrestled him, he gave us a really good match. And as crazy as it sounds, you hear terrible things about him at the time, but like after Jeff had that first match with Razor Ramon and they beat him up pretty good, the Clique guys, both Shawn, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall, even Sean Waltman, X-Pac, all those guys were real cool to both of us. They actually called Jeff because he got beat up by Scott Hall so much. And they said, "Oh, look at him." So he looks like Vanilla Ice. Jeff's haircut looked very similar to Vanilla Ice at that time. And they said, "Look, it's like Vanilla Ice." And they were going, bump, 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 bump. And that's all he did was bump Jeff to death in that match, just beating him up, dropping him time after time again. So it's funny. They kind of stuck, after that happened, and they talked to myself, and there was the second night I was at Wrestle Razor Ramon, and like he chopped me in the corner, and he had me chop him back, and my chops were louder than his. Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash were giving him a hard time about that. So they were always real cool to us. And they go, "Oh, there's those Hardy Boys. There's the Hardy Boys. Watch out." Well,
yeah, it's your passion. I'm sure that as them being in the business for a while and seeing these two young guys come up, probably almost like the passion they had, because, that's how you make it, partially with the passion. Which brings us, you kept going. King of the Ring 1995, I think it was, when you guys were holding the doors, the entranceways. You look back and can see that.
Yes, indeed.
Now, when you did that, were you like psyched because you were on pay-per-view even though you weren't wrestling? Or by that point had it worn off? Had it been old news because you kind of just do your thing?
No, absolutely. That was very exciting. And it was one of those things where, our mentality was like, we're getting to do something that's a pretty special gig that not everyone gets to do. Like, are they holding us in like a special regard? Like, do they have plans for us down the road? That's why we're getting to do this. And we did that. That was actually in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was here. I was there for it. That's when we threw everything at Mabel.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. One of the funniest things were, like, I actually was the guy that had the audio device in my ear, and it was going in and out, and I could barely hear. And you know, they would tell me like, open the door, or you know, close the door now. And at one point, they were telling me like, okay, open the door, and it was cutting out. I couldn't hear it all. And then eventually, they said it again. I was like, kind of leaned over, trying to hear, listen real well. And as I started opening the door back, someone from the very top of the building threw down a big fountain drink that was full of ice and hit me in the head and exploded all over me, and it almost knocked me unconscious. And they asked us to be like very straight-faced and very serious while we're doing this. And I just remember Jeff across from me like falling out, laughing, just trying to do whatever he could to contain his laughter. And I was just sitting there trying to like not. I was using the door to stand up, like trying to not pass out because I got blasted in the head by this cup that was full of ice. That's my biggest memory actually of that night altogether.
Oh yeah, mine too. That was a scene, man. I was a young kid. I think it was like $30 for floor seats at the time. How times have changed, and I remember them just showering stuff. And I remember it was a big ECW crowd, of course. And I feel like right around that time, it's when maybe people started to take notice that, you know, ECW and the change in the business kind of started a little bit from the fans' perspective. But my main question about all that is, it was cool to hear that story, but do you still have the outfits? Did you get to keep the outfit?
No, we didn't. We didn't get to keep the outfits. Unfortunately, we didn't. We had to turn them back in. That was also funny because the year before they had two big, jacked-up muscle heads that did the doors. And then Jeff and I came along the next year, young kids that, you know, were like smaller physiques, more athletic. And we had these big baggy outfits made of spandex that we were wearing. No, we turned those back in.
Well, good. I don't think you'd still be wearing them anyway. Well, Jeff might. I don't know about you.
Yeah, if I had mine, actually, they'd be going up on shopmatthardy.com right now. I'd be auctioning it off for sure.
Shopmatthardy.com, all the good Matt Hardy merchandise. Make sure you hit that up. I'm sure there's going to be tons of ring-worn stuff up there, right?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Hey, so, all right, now, when you officially got signed, Matt, you were still pretty young. Take me through that day. How'd you find out? Who told you? You know, how excited were you?
The news was broke to us originally by JR. We were with our guys actually doing TV. There was, you know, myself, Jeff, Joey Abs, his real name is Jason Arndt, who later got signed, Marty Garner Champagne. And
Champagne, you say champ, I say Payne.
Absolutely, first name Sham, last name Payne. You know, all of us, we were there, and they called Jeff and I off to the side, and they talked to us for a little bit, and we came back, they're like, oh my God, what'd you guys want? Like, was it anything good? Like, are you guys going to get like a special chance, or are you guys coming back on your own? And we're like, well, they offered us a developmental deal. And it was kind of heartbreaking to tell these guys that because we knew we were going to get opportunity, and they weren't right now, and you know, in the immediate future. But it was the most amazing thing, and like, you know, I remember just trying to contain my emotions because we were so excited. It was like the realization of a lifelong dream, and we were ready, man. We were going to sign our contracts there, regardless of what it said, how much money or the terms, whatever. It's just like, come on, we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. We're ready to do this. But it was pretty amazing, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, you got to stand there as they're telling you. I guess, you know, all business, straight face, shake their hand, thank you very much. Then would you go like hide in a bathroom and like start high fiving or jumping up and down? How'd you let it all out, man? You just got to stay calm till you left the building.
Yeah, that's what we tried to do. It was tough, to say the least. You know, we told these guys, and you know, once again, we didn't want to rub it in their face because obviously that would have been hard for them. But you know, Jeff and I, once we got back home, you know, in a couple of days, it was, you know, like, wow, this is unbelievable. And as soon as the contracts came, we just like, they said, you know, take them to your lawyer, you know, let them look at them, see what's going on. As soon as we got them, we both like signed them and sent them right back in. We were just ready to go to work.
Yeah, because I mean, not many people get that chance, man. That was very cool. And you guys come in as brothers and a tag team at that. Two guys achieving their dreams. And then I remember they put you after a little while with Michael Hayes as your manager, right?
Yes.
Did you guys, like, he's definitely just a brain and a fountain of knowledge in the business. Did you guys hang out off screen? I know he's a little wild. Did he give you guidance?
Yeah, we did, actually. It was his idea when he first came to us. Said, okay, we're going to be together. We're almost going to be like a new version of the Freebirds. And if we're going to work together, then we need to travel together, we need to be together, and we need to be like a band of brothers. So he started traveling with us, and it's funny. Like we learned a lot in ring and out of ring from Michael. I don't know if all that's good, but you know we did, and he really took us under his wing. And I have to say that Michael's the guy that really planted the seed in my mind of how it would later grow to work and get a good grasp on the psychology behind the business. Definitely.
I mean, I'm sure he got you into a little bit of trouble too, but that's you know, part of the game, I guess.
I mean, it's funny because back in the day, Michael now actually has calmed down a lot just because of different incidents and things that have happened, and he's doing really well, and he's got a great job for himself in WWE. But there were times like when we were on the road with them, those first few months of that year or whatever, where we would be on the road with him, and you have this older guy getting drunk and wanting to get in a fight with a young guy, and then you have the young guys of Man Jeff Hardy that are actually calming him down and dragging him out and getting him back to the hotel. I mean, it should have been role reversal in theory, but it wasn't. It was I was taking care of the Fabulous Freebird. He was getting his one last run.
Hey, man, that's a pretty good gig, your dream job, and getting to hang out with the Fabulous Freebird and taking care of him. He didn't urinate on you, did he?
No, there were times where there was one time a famous story where he chased Jeff one time around the whole building in and out of bathrooms, and Jeff eventually had to crawl into the ceiling to escape him.
I love it. All right, so you had a huge career. Everybody knows as the Hardy Boys. I mean, you guys broke barriers. Tag team wrestling was off the charts late 90s, which, nowadays tag team wrestling, I feel like there's still something there. You got tag teams that are pretty good, like the Usos and stuff up there, but tag team wrestling kind of taking a back seat. What are your thoughts on the current scene and if it ever come back, tag team wrestling?
It would be really nice if it did, and I've said this before. I mean, to me, the biggest explanation to me that I think I can kind of justify why tag team wrestling isn't a priority as it is right now is we were real fortunate whenever we came along, myself and Jeff, Edge and Christian, Dudley's, APA, the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, New Age Outlaws, Too Cool. All those tag teams actually got an opportunity, and we were actually written for, and we kind of got focused to a degree because you had The Rock, you had Stone Cold, and these guys were the two top guys, and, they were selling out arenas, across the world. They were doing huge numbers on TV, and like the top of the card, the main handful of guys that are the top guys that they feel like, is where they make the majority of their money, the WWE that is. These guys were taken care of, and it was set, and they already knew what they were going to do, so then they could start looking down the card and start taking care of other acts. And once tag team wrestling got some attention, it really took off on its own, and that division was a huge draw in itself. And we were allowed just to be able to do things like the ladder matches, the table matches, the TLC matches, and whatnot. I think now they're at a point because, the business is, on the down cycle. They're still looking for someone. They have John Cena as their main guy, and he's obviously the face of the company, but they're looking for someone who's going to be the white-hot guy that's going to try and draw the highest TV ratings, that they've had in several years. It's going to be selling out every arena in the ticket, and every, sell the most tickets that anybody's sold. And until they find, that guy or the handful of guys that, is the new wave that makes the business white hot again, they're going to put all their focus on that. And I think if that ever happens where they do find these guys, then tag team wrestling will, get some focus after that. But the priority is to find those first two or three guys that are going to be their main stars that are going to, start to break records and break barriers again.
Yeah, I think so. And that being said, also, I feel like sometimes they just kind of stick two singles guys together, and there's no really tag team. That there's no matching gear. There's no name. It's like I feel like kids nowadays have been re-educated to not really understand what tag teams are as much as they used to. And I don't know, who do you see coming up that could be the next white hot guys? Is there anybody in your mind that you see on the radar right now?
There's nobody that like stands up. There's nobody I'd say like, this guy's a sure pick. And in all reality, it's really hard to predict that because usually the guy who becomes the next white-hot guy, it happens accidentally. I mean, in a lot of ways, Hulkamania happened accidentally whenever they stumbled into the rock and wrestling era. Stone Cold obviously first came. He was the ringmaster, and the Stone Cold Steve Austin thing started out as a heel, and he was, he ended up being the anti-hero. I mean, that was never like planned out long-term, but like once it started, it rolled. And once again, I think the next guy who becomes the next white-hot guy, it will kind of be something that Vince stumbles in. It's not going to be like Hulk Hogan, where he was the guy that like said his prayers and he ate his vitamins and had all the Hulkamaniacs. Like this morally good character. That's after Hulk Hogan went out, he tried that with several other people. It didn't happen. With Steve Austin, there's been like they kind of did the thing recently with CM Punk and Johnny Ace, which kind of was like revisiting the anti-hero versus the authority figure type feud. I think whatever becomes the next white-hot act and angle in business will be something they kind of stumble upon that's different and new and original.
Definitely. Let's move on to version 1, Matt Hardy. You on your own, which huge fan of that. The Matt Facts. Did you come up with those?
Yeah, the Matt Facts. The one thing I can't say is like we had the idea about the screen doing like a Windows Media Player because my character was Matt Hardy. Version 1, the Sensei of Mattitude, and kind of a computer-driven thing, which that was my idea. But as far as putting the Matt Facts in the corner, I have to give that, I think the credit for the original concept of the Matt Facts was Kevin Dunn or the people in the television studio. So once they came up with that and they said, okay, well, we're going to put these little facts up, if you can come up with something different. And to me, that was one of the funnest points of my career at that time when I'd come into TV and they go, okay, well, you have a show, you have a match tonight, and we're going to put up a couple Matt facts. Can you give us 3 or 4? And I would actually sit there and I would take, things that were actually facts, about me, and I would try and make them entertaining to a degree, something funny or something people would remember and that would spin off. And probably the most famous one was Matt strongly dislikes mustard, which is true. Like, I can eat mustard, but I never get it on a sandwich or a hot dog if I have the choice, because I would rather not have it. So those things there was some truth to all those things, and then they would kind of be, dressed up a little bit to be entertaining.
What do you think was your favorite when you came up with Matt Fact?
Probably that one. I mean, Matt strongly dislikes mustard. It was a really, really good one.
I was always a fan of Matt likes to keep his house at a toasty whatever degrees, and Matt has all marble countertops. I like those two.
Yes. I mean, to me, I think the secret of those things were, finding like a real unique adjective or a real unique verb to put in there to describe it, just to make it sound a little different or something, to make it sound a little ridiculous, but where it's still like a true statement. So those were really fun to do. Those were really entertaining.
Matt, I have to say, I love how you do the little things like that are in turn become big things. I think that's very important that you focus on them, and I think the fans, they might not even know that you're focusing on them, but I think it's so cool that you do that. Like, for instance, when you're doing version 1, the V1 hand symbol, was that yours too? Did you come up with that?
Yes, it was mine.
Now, I've heard a story, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard a story that you were actually told not to do that. Is this true?
Yeah, actually, there was a point where once I started doing it, I would say it almost every time back to back, because I was like in a process of like, okay, well, if I'm going to get this over on television, you kind of have to repeat the process over and over and educate the fans. Stephanie McMahon was doing a lot of directing of several pre-tapes and backstage stuff at that time. And when I go, yeah, because I'm Matt Hardy, version 1, at one point she just busted a pre-tape and said, hey, I just don't think you should do this. It's not going to get over. I hate to tell you, like, I see you're doing this with your hand, and you're saying this version 1. Like, I don't think people are going to be into this V1, or, they're not going to buy into this. So I think you should stop. Don't do it anymore. And then, like, later, I just had to go to Vince and say, hey, do you like this version 1 thing? And the V1 hand sign I'm doing is starting to catch on. I can notice on the road, where usually when you're on the road, that's usually the best barometer for any talent to kind of figure out like what's working and what's not working.
Okay.
But every time I'd be on the road and we do house shows, I would just realize like there's more people holding up the V1 hand sign. There's more, and even though you're a heel, it's like as long as they're kind of catching on to what your act is, it's okay. And he gave me the green light to do it. And the next thing I know, they were putting out shirts and they had all kinds of other merchandise, and they loved the whole concept of V1, and Stephanie never bothered me about it again.
That's awesome. That's cool you stood up for that, because I think a lot of guys might kind of put the tail between their legs, just want to keep their job. Again, that says a lot for you as a person to do that. Version 1, was there ever plans to do, like, once that played out its course, to do another gimmick, like to evolve, like to a version 2 or something?
No, there was never really anything talked about, and it's funny because I hear that a lot because, version 1 was probably the thing that really stood out in my career more than any other time, is me actually, breaking off into like a singles guy and being a heel. And it was the first time you had either Matt or Jeff Hardy do something that was extremely different from the Hardy Boys, because when we split and went our different ways, Jeff Hardy was still Jeff Hardy, the charismatic enigma, and like his style was still like a representation of the Hardy Boys tag team. And for me, I kind of broke off and did something completely new, which I wasn't like the extreme guy that jumped off ropes or focused on ladder matches. I was Matt Hardy version 1, where I said, okay, well, I'm just the true version of myself, and I was this delusional character that had these dreams of grandeur and, these mad facts, and tried to entertain people. So it was different, and a lot of people really go, wow, that was cool because you broke through and you created something differently. And a lot of people just thought, well, we thought the natural, evolution of it is to become version 2. And for me, I just thought that it's going to be hard because, like, if you're version 2, how much can I actually change and still be the same character? That's like a new version. So, I've heard that question a lot, and people have asked about it. And, it'd be hard to do like a V2 hand sign because it's hard to put, 5 fingers up with one down in the middle with 2 up with a V and a 2. So it's something that was never officially talked about, but I've heard that so much, and I just think it's kind of like version 1 has to be kind of the ending point. If I created something more that was a version 2, it kind of needs another title and something new.
How important do you think, that being said, it is to evolve in the wrestling business? I mean, Undertaker, he, for instance, did it. A lot of people do it. Do you think that's an intricate part of making it big and keeping yourself there?
It's hugely important. I mean, besides just evolving, I mean, just being able to reinvent yourself is incredibly important. And you always need to be thinking in the back of your mind, I think, as a talent, like, wherever your career is going currently and whatever you're doing, whatever relates to you, even if it's from, personal life that people know about or whatever experiences or things you've done within the ring that relate to you, that people believe, that there's a strong line of believability. You always have to be thinking about changing your character, because people now, more than ever, because wrestling fans are so educated and so smart about what are the inner workings of the business to a degree. I mean, with what they know about you, you just have to realize, like, you need to project this image or this persona that people are going to believe. And the closer it is to your real life, the more they're going to believe it. And that's when you are legitimized, when people believe you and what you're doing, all the way from your character to your in-ring work. And that's really a thing that it took a long time to learn in the business altogether. Like, you can do a bunch of pretty moves and great high spots, but at some point people have to believe that you can beat somebody else up. Like, the realm of believability is huge as a worker and the work rate as an athlete, and also your character.
No, and nothing better proves that point to what you just said. And we're not going to get into all this, but the Lita Edge you thing that happened, then you left for a little while. People wanted you back because that was so believable. It was real. It was almost organic. It was amazing how that took off when you were gone. When you were released after that, Matt, did they kind of tell you we're going to have a cooling off period and you're coming back? Were you nervous? What was the deal?
No, they definitely didn't tell me like you're leaving and coming back. It was just like you're gone. Creative doesn't have anything for you right now. And then it just became me at that point kind of broadcasting my story. And obviously along the way I look back and I know I made mistakes there, and in life, like, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I try to make it a point to learn from them each time. And once people kind of heard my story and what was going on, they were so passionate about backing me up and believing in me. It led to this huge outcry of support, and WWE gave me a call, and I was back in a couple weeks.
It was all. I mean, I was actually in Philadelphia. I think you guys did something in the crowd, and
yep.
the reaction. I was standing right by there where you guys were fighting in the crowd, and the reaction was like something I hadn't seen in years. It was so cool to see how the crowd reacted to that, and that you guys had inadvertently set that up. But I mean, it was awesome. I'll let you go in a minute, but I just want to know a couple more things. One was it, Jeff seems to enjoy wrestling, but I've always thought that you love it, like you just love wrestling, where Jeff he likes it, but you love it. So is that correct? I mean, that assertion?
I think so. Jeff's a very deep person who has a lot of other artistic interest, and now more than ever, Jeff's just like at such a good place. He's just back to doing his art all the time, and he's really excited about being a dad. He's got a daughter that's almost 2 years old now. So Jeff is very passionate about wrestling, but he's never had like the full love, would go back and watch old stuff, or would think more about what he can do for his character. I mean, Jeff now gets into like what his face paint's going to be like. He'll think all day about how artistic and how cool he can make his face paint, because he's really into doing that. The actual art of wrestling, as far as that goes, or like even wanting to maybe like have a wrestling school or train others or help others or giving others advice, or Jeff's cool with doing that, but it's not something he's very passionate about, not as much as I am, I would say. So Jeff's really gifted as far as wrestling goes, especially from a athletic standpoint and a personality standpoint. As far as truly loving the business, I would, and he would say it as well, like, I definitely love the business more than he does. We're both very passionate about it and how we do it, but I love the business more like from a complete broad stroke, I would say, like the whole aspect of the business. I really love everything that the business has to do with. I
think that I kind of feel the same way. It kind of to a point controlled my life when I was growing up, and even now. So I always wondered when I watched, because I always felt that way about you guys. Was there any type of jealousy? It doesn't have to be like mean jealousy, but was there any type of jealousy when his career really started to take off there in 07, 08, 09?
No, there wasn't then at all. Like, I was just very happy to have him back, and I can be very honest and blunt about this. Like in 02, whenever we split a little bit, right before that, like, Jeff was starting to get the opportunity, and Jeff was real burnt out in wrestling, and Jeff kind of, from a personal standpoint, actually kind of was just burned and was focusing on so many other things than wrestling. But because after he had the ladder match with The Undertaker, which they thought was the greatest match of all time, and they thought Jeff was going to be like the next big thing, like, Jeff always got the focus of attention. And I was having some great matches, actually, with Stevie Richards, someone who's going to be on the Extreme Rising shows coming up. I was having these great matches that were on Heat, and Jeff was on Raw every week, and I just asked, like, why am I not on Raw? And they said, well, we really think Jeff has the potential to be something great now, and we think two Hardys, both on Raw, are going to be confusing to the viewer. Right now we're trying to really put all the focus on Jeff. And to me at that point, it wasn't that I was bitter or jealous, but for me it was very frustrating. because I'd gotten to really great shape of that life. At that point in my life, I felt like I was working really hard. I was having great matches, and I was just looking for an opportunity more than anything else. And then after that, I started realizing, as far as myself and Jeff goes, like, my race isn't against Jeff because I'm still going to be okay, and I'm still going to be able to do my thing. I'm just racing against myself when it's all said and done, and that's who I need to focus on. And, you know, once I had that mentality, I felt a lot more comfortable about everything I did, and then also I focused more on what I did. Whenever Jeff came back, I was just glad to have my brother back working with me again and being able to be on the road and travel when we could travel. As far as, like, competing with him and being jealous of him and all that, and when he came back and he had his last run, not at all. I was happy for everything he did. You know, the story was written, obviously, that we did from a storyline entertainment perspective that I was jealous of him, but personally, no, I definitely wasn't.
Okay. And, you know, I've heard you talk about, and probably this would go for Jeff, too, your bump card, you call it, which I think is an excellent way to explain things to people. Could you, explain the bump card thing, and did you come up with that, or, you know, how did that come up? I think it's such a good idea.
You know, I heard someone, I can't remember specifically who it was, I remember hearing someone say some kind of terminology close to this, and I thought that's what they said. It wasn't specifically what they said, but then I kind of took it and I made it my own terminology from that point on. But obviously, it's like saying if you go to any business and you have like a card, and if you fill the card up, you know, the card's full and you have to turn it back in, either get like a discount or, you know, you're done. The bump card's the same thing, more or less. Like, everybody's body has so many bumps it's allowed to, because obviously it's not natural for the human body to be slammed down on wooden steel over and over again.
No way.
You know, so like you have this bump card, and then like especially when you're young and you're healthy, it's like you're ready to take over the world. You'll go out, you'll do everything, and you know, people told us to slow down and not take as many crazy bumps, not take as many bumps. You know, but when you're young,
you don't listen. You don't listen when you're young.
Not at all. You're trying to get yourself over. You just want to go out and make a statement. You know, but once you're older and your body's a little beat up, you do realize, like, wow, it'd been nice if I knew then what I know now, but that never happens. That's you kind of, part of the whole learning process is, you know, filling up your bump card very quickly. But it's like your body only has so many bumps, you know, until you fill up that bump card. And like both of us, you know, have put quite a number of bumps on both of our bump cards. So, you know, we're trying to find areas where we can on a bump card, like punch it right on the edges and by the corners wherever they're open, you know, to get out of it what we can get out of. But that's what that terminology obviously represents.
I just think that's such a good way to explain it, because I think it was X-Pac I talked to one time. He said that, you know, you never know it when you're young, and then you start telling the younger kids as you get older, and they don't believe you either. They're like, oh, that guy just can't do what I can do. You know, it's that kind of thing. So... But you'll be in town for Extreme Rising. It's June 30th in Philly, June 29th in New York. I don't know who you're wrestling in Philly. Do you know, is it going to be, I know Sabu's going to be there, the Gangsters, Stevie. That'd be cool if you wrestled him. Maybe Sabu? Do you know yet?
Yeah, I would love to wrestle Sabu. That would be great. You know, it's announced myself and Jerry Lynn. We're wrestling in New York this Friday, in Corona there. And then I'll be wrestling as well. They haven't officially announced it yet. And they had a couple ideas, and both the ideas I heard were really cool. But I'll definitely be there in Philly, and I will be in action performing. And I'm really excited, man. I think they learned a lot from their first Extreme Rising event, and these guys are very passionate. Everybody that I spoke to that, you know, is kind of driving the ship here, who's behind the helms, they're really passionate about wanting to try and maybe start up some sort of new niche that, you know, is a newer version of ECW that still kind of is like an alternative product, but is more updated. And I think now they've kind of looked back at their first event, and they've critiqued a lot of things, and they've tried to, you know, tweak a lot of things here and there. And I think both shows are going to be really good. And I think the Saturday night show in Philadelphia, if you came to the first one and you weren't exactly pleased, I think this one will actually make you a lot more happy.
Yeah, I tell you, I had Shane, he actually came in studio, Shane Douglas, last time before that show, and we spoke off the air in detail, too, about the show, and they are, I can say, too, very excited about it. So I'm really pulling for these guys. I'm hoping that they can have another great show, or actually have a first great show and not get kind of bogged down with what happened before. Keep moving forward. ExtremeReunion.net for tickets and more info. Before I let you go, Matt, one more thing. I have to mention this because it's a Twitter thing. I know you're very active on social networking. Sid was on Raw, okay?
Right.
Now, I don't mean to bring your girlfriend into this, but I know you were supposed to wrestle him. I remember this at a PWS show. I think it was back in like March, and he didn't show up. Mm-hmm. The promoter went all like Dennis Corluzzo and gave out the phone number and had people do all that crazy stuff. Now, your girlfriend had some stuff to say about that on Twitter. You choose to comment on that or no?
Sure. It's pretty interesting. She was blown away last night when, she heard that some, other people had made comments on it. Because I think the thing with her, she was there. She had, made the trip. She was working that PWS show you're talking about where I was going to wrestle Sid. And I was kind of giving her the breakdown. And I told her how Sid had been notorious for doing that at some points. And then that day, Sid didn't show up. And for me now, like, I'm at a point in my life where, I'm not offended by anything. Like, I'll make the best out of every situation I'm in. Like, I enjoy every day God gives me on this planet. And, when I was there and, she was just real annoyed by it, she felt like, obviously, like, well, that's just disrespectful that, he told the promoter he was going to be there, and then he didn't tell him till after his flight was supposed to land that he wasn't going to show up. And, she's from Queens, New York, man. She's very headstrong. She's very, like, tell the truth, and, like, whatever you believe is, like, what you say, like, don't hold back. She's not worried about being politically correct. And it's really funny when she said that, and she was really surprised by how many people just, read what she said and either passionately said, like, oh, my God, that's great, or like, oh, why are you talking about this? So I would imagine that's going to be a big headline today, which is interesting, like Rebby Sky's grabbing the headlines as opposed to the controversial Matt Hardy, which is kind of funny in my book. As far as it goes with Sid being there on Raw, like, good for him. It's just one of those things. I'm a big advocate of if you give someone your word and, you're going to be somewhere and show up and wrestle, like, do it, or don't hold anyone up for money. But to each wrestling promotion their own. Like if Sid has burned people in the past, and I'd definitely be very wary of booking him, obviously. So it's just one of those things that's very funny that her opinion stuck out. She is very headstrong. In a lot of ways, she's been good for me because I'm laid back and I'm very Southern and I'm very give people the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes it's hard for me to say what always needs to be said, but even just dealing with her, and whenever we have differences of opinions, like I have to put it out on the table and say what I said because she's definitely bringing it. But it's been a good learning experience for me as well.
Yeah, I would say she's been good for you from what I can see following you on Twitter and all in your personal life as well. And I'm just glad to have you on here, man. Matt Hardy, are you going to be on Raw? Did they invite you to come back yet?
All I can say about this business, it's crazy and it's insane, and I love it. Just never say never about anything.
Where's Matt Hardy in his life today? Can you see yourself going back at all? I mean, I know that you had your share of problems, and I'll tell you what, talking to you on the interview here, you seem so clear-headed, and I'm so happy because, man, you made me nervous for a little bit there watching those videos and stuff.
Sure, yeah, I've never been so clear. I've never been content. I've never been as content as I am in my life right now. So it's one of those things, man. It's crazy as it sounds too. Like even when you watch a storyline on TV, sometimes if you see someone go through like a tough situation, usually it'll either break them or they'll become stronger because of it. And I definitely think I have become stronger because of the obstacles I've been through in life, and I feel like I've overcome. But like I'm in a very good place, and it's like I've never really appreciated and enjoyed life as much as I am right now currently.
Oh, I love it. And I love it. Can't wait to see you Friday night, Corona, New York against Jerry Lynn. Going to be an awesome match. Sorry to set the standards high there, but I feel like we can do that.
Yeah, I like high standards. And I'm really excited, too, about the audience because they are smart fans. They're Northeastern fans. They're educated, like old ECW-type fans.
I know. I grew up as one of them.
Or they boo, I'm going to be ready to go, and I'm gonna have my working shoes on, and I'm going to have fun.
And then this Friday, Pennsylvania National Guard, this Saturday, Pennsylvania National Guard Armory, ExtremeReunion.net again for tickets and more info. Matt Hardy will be there. Hopefully you will too, Matt. Thank you for taking so much time with us, visiting with the Soscia Network today. I really appreciate it, man.
You got it. No, thank you, man. And the last thing I was going to say, for all things Matt Hardy, if you guys are looking to keep up with me, please go to my new website, which Rebby has built as well, and she did an amazing job. She did everything from the coding to all the pictures and photography. It's MattHardyBrand.com, and there's all kinds of stuff in there, and you can kind of keep up with all the Extreme Rising updates and everything else I have going on in the social media world and all my social media family. Please go visit MattHardyBrand.com.
MattHardyBrand.com, and I'll also put a link up on our website for our listeners, too. And what was your shop, Matt Hardy? Was the other one?
Yeah, it's the shop that is linked to MattHardyBrand.com. It's shopmatthardy.com.
All right, cool. Hey, thank you so much again for coming on. It was great talking to you, man, and I really just appreciate the time you spent.
Thanks, man. You too. I enjoyed it.